Welcome to Baha'i Critic. Today we'll talk about gender equality. The Universal House of Justice is the supreme governing body of the Baha'i Faith. It is considered to be infallible, so every decision of theirs is a decision of God's. And it can legislate in all aspects of life, including, and not limited to, women's reproduction. So here's an example where they condemned tubal ligation. They wrote, "Under normal circumstances, it is not permissible to have a surgical operation for the purpose of not having more children, if such an operation could result in permanent sterility." Furthermore, the Universal House of Justice was established in 1963. It is comprised of 9 members, and it has an election every 5 years. And guess what? Its membership is restricted to men. And this penis-only policy is expected to remain erect for the next 804 years, at least. And to destroy whatever optimism you have, they wrote, the Universal House of Justice wrote, that their policy is neither amenable to change nor subject to speculation about some possible future condition. In other words, it's permanent, and don't even think about it not being permanent. Do you remember the male guardianship of women in Saudi Arabia? Well, here's an interesting comparison. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, every woman has one male guardian, whereas in the Baha'i Faith, all women have the same 9 male guardians. And if you're a Baha'i and you object to the use of the word guardian, Baha'u'llah himself referred to the members of the House of Justice as guardians. Anyways, here's an example. A Saudi Arabian woman cannot travel outside of Saudi Arabia if her male guardian doesn't grant permission. Whereas in the Baha'i Faith, all Baha'i women cannot travel to Israel if their 9 male guardians do not grant permission. And here's the proof of that, a snip taken from the official site of the Baha'i World Center. And in case you can't read the print, I've copied and pasted for you here. To summarize, they wrote that you must have the permission of the Universal House of Justice to enter Israel, regardless of the nature of your visit. Regardless if you intend to visit your relatives, or you're on a business trip, and not only that, but they'll determine the maximum duration of your stay. Here's another comparison. Twelverism, a denomination of Islam and predecessor of the Baha'i Faith. Let's compare Twelverism to the Baha'i Faith. The Globe and Mail wrote that he, referring to the Grand Ayatollah Sani, believes it is perfectly acceptable for a woman to be president of the Republic, or even the spiritual leader, a post believed to be ordained by God. Here's another example. The Grand Ayatollah Jannati wrote on his website, "It is not necessary that a mujtahid who is followed for taqleed be a man." In case you're not familiar with the terminology, mujtahid is the highest ranking religious authority, equal to that of himself. And taqleed literally means emulation. That is when you follow the religious teachings of another. So in summary, in Islam, women have the potential to hold the highest political and or spiritual office, whereas in the Baha'i Faith, women are permanently debarred from holding the highest political and spiritual office. That is the membership of the Universal House of Justice. And keep in mind that Baha'is believe that the Universal House of Justice is the future world government, because they believe that most, if not everyone on earth, will convert to the Baha'i Faith. Now looking back at our problem, wrong religion. Looking back at our problem, let's look at what the central figures had to say. Abdu'l-Baha wrote that equality of men and women, except in some negligible instances, has been fully and categorically announced. The use of the word "except" implies that women and men aren't truly equal. And I can't believe you use the word negligible. To debar women from the highest governing body that is considered infallible and has the authority to legislate in all aspects of life, and you consider it negligible? Furthermore, he wrote, as to the House of Justice, referring to the same institution, according to the explicit text of the law of God, its membership is exclusively reserved to men. There is divine wisdom in this, which will presently be made manifest, even as the midday sun. In other words, he's saying that I know it sounds fucked up now, but in the future it won't sound as sexist. And to illustrate the fallacy of this justification, let's look at a hypothetical example. If you have this individual with long hair who is a member of an hypothetical religion, and he tells a Baha'i, my religion forbids women to drive unless it is necessary. The Baha'i responds, isn't that sexist? And this member of a obscure hypothetical religion responds, my religious leaders promised that the wisdom of it will be known in the future, which is precisely the same justification the Baha'is use. Now, a Baha'i hearing this has two options. You can either condone, in this case, which means that you're condoning sexism in the name of religious freedom, or you can condemn, but then you'll also be condemning yourself since you use the same excuse, or else you'll have a double standard. Let's look at some other justifications. Some sexists like to point out the biological differences between men and women. They'll say that men and women are equal, not identical. So what? Doesn't justify unequal treatment. Which is the same shit I hear from Baha'is. Here's another justification. To claim that whatever women are being deprived of is a position of service, not superiority. So this guy could say, well, being a driver is a position of service, not superiority. And I'm sure you can come up with a long-winded explanation of how, just as a queen has someone to drive her around, similarly we treat our women like queens and therefore we drive them around, blah blah blah. You get my point. And Baha'is use the same reasoning. They'll say that being a member of the Universal House of Justice is a position of service, not superiority. Here's another justification, and the simplest one, to say that it's God's law. Who am I to argue, right? Which is the same shit that Baha'is use. And again, in each case, you have two options. You condone or you condemn. Here's another justification, and this one I took out from the writings of Abdul Baha. Women and men are equal from the spiritual point of view. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Or they'll say that women and men are equal in the sight of God. Okay, but what is that? That doesn't address the accusation of sexism. Doesn't justify unequal treatment. Here's my favorite. This is when female members of the religion will say that whatever they're being deprived of is burdensome. A lady could say, well, being a driver is burdensome. Or they'll say that I don't even want to drive. In fact, it's a blessing that I don't have to drive. I'm too busy. And this is the same shit I hear Baha'i women say. They say that I don't even want to be a member of the Universal House of Justice. In fact, it's a good thing that I don't have to. It's burdensome and I'm busy. You get my point. Shoghi Effendi wrote, as regards the membership of the International House of Justice, referring to the same institution we're talking about, Abdul Baha states in a tablet that it is confined to men, and that the wisdom of it will be revealed as manifest as the sun in the future. Now we already pointed out the fallacy of this reasoning. Next, he wrote, in any case, the believers should know that, as Abdul Baha himself has explicitly stated, that sexes are equal except in some cases, which means they're not truly equal. The exclusion of women from the International House of Justice should not be surprising. Yeah, why are you surprised? Why are you surprised that your religion excludes women? After all, they're not truly equal. Lastly, he wrote that from the fact that there is no equality of functions between the sexes, one should not, however, infer that either sex is inherently superior or inferior to the other, or that they are unequal in their rights. He fucking contradicted himself. If there's no equality of functions, then they are unequal in their rights. If you're depriving women of something that men can do, then they are unequal in their rights. Holy shit. 11 years later, he wrote, people must just accept the fact that women are not eligible to the International House of Justice. As the Master says, the wisdom of this will be known in the future. We can only accept believing it is right, and not able to give an explanation, calculate to silence an ardent feminist with an explanation point. So he admits that he can't silence someone. They can't provide an adequate explanation to someone who truly believes in gender equality. Now, feminism is about gender equality. Equality meaning equal opportunities regardless of sex. And if you have a policy that only men can become drivers, or only men can hold membership to the highest religious institution, then you have unequal opportunities, and therefore gender inequality, which is synonymous to sexism. Baha'is will never admit that the religion is sexist or this policy is sexist, because sexism has a negative connotation, and God forbid if they ever associate anything negative to their religion. Now, in regards to the Supreme Being, the Baha'i writings refer to the Supreme Being as God, Father, Master, Lord, King, exclusive use of the masculine titles, along with the male pronouns. All the known manifestations of God are men. All the central figures are men. The sacred texts are catered to the male audience, and you can tell by the use of the word man to refer to a human being, mankind to refer to humanity, along with the male pronouns. And most of the laws require the use of the principle mutatis mutandis in order to include women into the discussion. So here's an example point out to you. In the introduction of the Kitab Aqdas, the Universal House of Justice wrote, in general, the laws of the Kitab Aqdas are stated succinctly. An example of this conciseness can be seen in the fact that many are expressed only as they apply to a man. See what I mean? But it is apparent from the Guardian's writings that where Baha'u'llah has given a law as between a man and woman, it applies mutatis mutandis between a woman and a man unless the context makes this impossible. So their excuse is that the most holy book, Kitab Aqdas, is being succinct or concise. Pardon my mispronunciations. But the fallacy of this is that Baha'u'llah could have used gender-neutral words. Here's an example. In verse 107 of the Kitab Aqdas, Baha'u'llah wrote, "It is forbidden you to wed your father's wives." In other words, you're forbidden. Men are prohibited to marry their stepmothers. And likewise, this law also applies to women. So women are prohibited to marry their stepfathers. Now, Baha'u'llah could have used the word step-parents. Again, it's not a matter of being concise or succinct. So that's just a silly excuse. Now, Baha'u'llah could have borrowed the word, if it was already in use, or he could have coined it. It's not much to ask, because Baha'u'llah claimed to be a manifestation of God, providing perfect guidance for 1,000 years. That's 800 years from now. Is it too much to ask that he would have used gender-neutral words? And because he used gender-specific words, that in manuscripts and the translations that are all considered to be perfect are now, they display the same androcentricity. And if Baha'u'llah did use gender-neutral words, then until today, his followers would be fucking bragging about it. They'll be like, oh my god, the Baha'i Faith is so progressive. Is the only religion to, to include, to use gender-inclusive language. They'll never shut the fuck up about it, trust me. But because he didn't use gender-neutral words, that his followers are now, looking at me like, oh, I'm making a big deal out of this. Now the problem isn't just the fact that the writing, the manuscripts and the translations are androcentric, okay? But women are prohibited to change a single word or a single pronoun when it comes to the recitation of Baha'i writings, including prayers. The secretary of the Guardian wrote, regarding your question as to the changing of pronouns in Baha'i prayers, the Guardian does not approve of such changes, either in the specific prayers or in any others. They should be read as printed without changing a single word. Keep in mind, this is about pronunciation. This is about, the recitation of prayers here. Again, he wrote, also concerning your question about the prayers and the changing the pronoun, this cannot be done even in the long obligatory prayer or the healing prayers. Either we must square this mere detail or say a prayer that applies to our sex or number. So this is what he's talking about. In the medium obligatory prayer is written, disappoint not, O my God, him, referring to yourself, that hath blah blah blah, right? In the long obligatory prayer, there's a line, I am thy servant, O my Lord, and the son of thy servant. This is what Baha'i women have to recite. And keep in mind that servant, in the Baha'i writing, servant refers to a man, and maidservant refers to a woman. There's another line, thou seest, O my Lord, this stranger hastening to his, again referring to yourself. The Universal House of Justice wrote, with respect to your question as to whether it is permissible for a female in reciting the long obligatory prayer to say, I am thy handmaiden, O my Lord, and the daughter of thy handmaiden. See what I mean? You are correct in your understanding that the Guardian did not wish Baha'is to change the gender of pronouns and nouns in the revealed prayers. Now, don't let Baha'is fool you if they use the excuse that, the androcentricity has to do with the historical and cultural context. The problem with the fallacy of this excuse has to do with their doctrine of infallibility. That is, they believe that the manuscripts and the translations and everything is fucking perfect. This is why they don't want you to even change a single pronoun when it comes to the recitation of prayers, because they believe it's all fucking perfect. That's the problem. If it wasn't for infallibility, the doctrine of infallibility, I will accept that excuse, but it's not. And this is going to be the same situation for the next 800 years. Now, despite all this, Abdul Baha wrote, or he said, I don't know, whatever is attributed to him, he referring to Baha'u'llah, establishes the equality of men and women. This is peculiar to the teachings of Baha'u'llah, for all other religions have placed man above woman. And again, the equality of men and women, this is peculiar to Baha'u'llah, for all other religions have placed men above women. What the fuck, man? Why do you shit on other religions? I mean, your religion is just as fucked up. Anyways, in short, the Baha'i Faith is patriarchal, male-dominated. It's just like all the other Abrahamic religions. Fuck that.